Hello and welcome to today's OurGame show with myself, Shane Stapleton, with Carey, who's here beside me once again, and Richie Power will be joining us shortly. Kieran, how are things with you this week?
Good now, and absolutely exceptional today with the sun that's out today and the weather that we're getting this week. On top of a very good victory the weekend as well.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll talk about Limerick's latest win, and this time down a few players, including, I suppose, your own nephew, Cian Lynch, going off after a few minutes. Limerick still finding a way to do it. Now, I tweeted afterwards that this was a significant failure from Watford, given the context of, Limerick being down players like Kyle Hayes, Seamus Flanagan, and obviously Cian going off. Would you see it that way? Is this a big blow to Watford?
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it from a few different points, right? And I suppose I'm looking at it from, Watford playing Limerick in the last 3 years, and Limerick giving them a kind of a toast in the last 3 years. So obviously, Waterford need to do their level best to change that. And the night in question, as you rightly pointed out, no Peter Casey, no Flanagan, no Kyle Hayes, and Cian Lynch gone after 7 minutes. And I suppose I'm saying to myself, will Waterford get as good as chance again to do Limerick and get a proper result? I think Saturday night was a huge opportunity for them, and I suppose to cross the line. But there was patches in the game. I suppose they won the first quarter, Limerick won the second quarter. I think Limerick didn't, notched it up a bit. Okay, they got the goal from a free in the last 5 minutes in the second goal, and that can be kind of slightly flawed. But I felt for the first 20 minutes, actually they were probably going for goals quietly. They were trying to work the ball in, and the intensity was ferocious. They came with everything they had, and but whatever it is about Limerick, whatever challenge they have put in front of them, and Saturday night was a huge challenge for them. They always find a way to kind of not only get through the challenge, but do it with flying colours. And Saturday night was no different. Their backs as a unit were outstanding. Gillane, top class. Hegarty, I suppose, being honest, Gerard was lucky he didn't get the red card after 7 minutes. There was two little incidents there, and I'd say it was only that it happened earlier on in the game. He could have got his marching orders. And I suppose that's an area of his game that he kind of, he needs to look at it, he needs to fine-tune it, and he needs to change because, this late flicks that are going back, other inter-county players, they're aware of it, they see it, and they know it is going to come. So that in itself is going to attract a certain amount of attention on a game when he necessarily doesn't need that.
Yeah, we've so much to talk about in the show today. The first 15 minutes will be available to everyone, and after that it'll be patreon.com/OurGame. A couple of things we want to talk about in the show today here are, should Cork rip up the script? And I suppose I put together a sort of a revamped 15 in terms of if they were to go more physical. Now, I'll ask the two lads about that later in the show, but there's a little hint of it. I'm looking at maybe, Mark Keane, AFL athlete, could you put him into the half back line? He played centre back with his club Ballygiblin during their All Ireland junior run. I know he's been used full forward more recently. Pack that midfield with Robbie O'Flynn, Mark Coleman, Luke Meade, who I can't really understand why he's gone off the boil, Dara Fitzgibbon, maybe Jack O'Connor for the pace. So I'll ask the two boys about that a little bit later on. Also, another thing I want to talk about, Richie, and first off, I'm going to ask you about Limerick Watford, but we're going to be touching on whether Aaron Gillane is now the elite inside forward in the game. Obviously, you've played there. Kieran knows him very well from Patrick's, having managed him there. But I suppose first, Richie, what were your thoughts on Limerick and beating Watford despite being down some really key men?
Yeah, I suppose, Shane, I listening to Kieran there, and he was dead right, the personnel that Limerick were down and short on Saturday evening. It was a huge opportunity for Watford to kind of get the scalp of the All-Ireland champions. But, I suppose in one way, I do believe Watford have closed the gap. We talked about it last week about the combined, I think it was 72 points over the last 5 championship games. Yeah. I do think they have closed the gap, but I did say, I suppose, when Cian went off after 5 or 6 minutes, I said, if ever there was a chance for Watford to get a result, now tonight was the night. And it was mind-boggling, to kind of look at Limerick and, bring on the Cathal O'Neill, 3 points. He's only 20 years of age, probably missed another 3 points, and really just kind of stepped into the shoes of Cian Lynch, which, if I had to pick one player from the Limerick team that Limerick couldn't do without, Cian Lynch would be the first player, you know, on my lips. So, you know, for Limerick to show that and to do it without, as Kieran said, Seamus Flanagan, Peter Casey, Kyle Hayes, that's 4 of their marquee forwards now. If Kyle Hayes is going to continue at full forward, so if that's what they can do without 4 of their marquee players and notch up, was it 29 points? I would hate to see what they'll do if those 4 guys come back into that starting lineup. So look, it just goes to show the strength and depth that's in the Limerick panel. I may have questioned it a little bit coming into this year's championship, that did they have that strength and depth? Well, they certainly proved it Saturday night. And for the rest of the country, you know, it's already looking like teams are playing for second place, Shane. And I don't say that lightly. You know, Kieran is smiling there, coming from a Kilkenny man, but I honestly believe it's just I didn't think Limerick could improve on last year, but I actually think they're a better team this year with Mike Casey back in the team, and also I suppose with Kyle Hayes moving to the forward line as well, it just gives them that, I suppose, that extra target man as well. So for me, they're stronger this year than they were last year, and it's worrying time, not worrying times, but it's great times to be a Limerick supporter. But for the rest of us, we've a long road ahead to try and catch up.
Yeah, and having watching Limerick under-20s last night, they looked really good there. Liam Linehan has pointed out some of the players. The 3 Limerick forwards scored 5 points each. Aidan O'Connor, Adam English and Shane O'Brien. Future looks good for their Limerick hurlers. And I suppose there were plenty of Watford hurlers who were good too, but it could have been by more than 3 points for a finish. The Cork-Watford, Cork Tipperary game was also very exciting. Tipp just about came out on top there. And I mean, from a Tipp point of view, I'd be hoping 1 or 2 of them can graduate very soon. Kieran, I mean, if Keane is out for a while, I'm sure you're not going to give us the prognosis or anything like that, but if he's out for a while, do you think teams will now set up slightly different against Limerick? With, you know, does it present any sort of an opportunity maybe for Tipp next week?
I suppose this time last year, he was probably going so well himself, you know, and I suppose, as Richie pointed out, and you know, he's on the ball, I believe they're probably even a far better machine this year than last year. And I suppose if you asked me this question last year, I'd probably say, yeah, he'll be a huge loss. Obviously, he's going to be lost, but, you know, Limerick will still drive on. You know, Cathal O'Neill didn't start. He came on, and, you know, he's a great kid, a great young fella. But if you look at Limerick, whether they go short, whether they go long, whether they go into traffic, whether they're after improving an awful lot, they're hugely technical inside there. They're coming out with every ball. So whether it is Keane Lynch that's out, or Aaron Gillan that's out, they have replacements. And I suppose they're playing to a system, Shane, here. And the system hasn't changed in the last 4 years. I suppose it's getting the personnel probably replace who's injured, or replace who probably isn't producing the goods on any given day, is to go in and improve the situation. But you have to play to the system. And it's the system that's really driving this.
Richie, when you look at this team, does it remind you of ye when you were at your pomp with Kilkenny?
In certain terms it does, Shane, you know, and I suppose, like Kieran just said there, like the system hasn't changed in 4 years, and yet no team has come up with a system to counteract it, you know. And I suppose for me that's the mind-boggling thing about it, you know, that with regards to how teams haven't set up differently, but they've tried, but they've failed, you know. It's such a finely tuned system, and it's nearly, it's undefendable against, I suppose, in one respect, because the guys inside are such ball winners. They can win it on the ground, they can win it in the air, they can win a good ball, a bad ball, you name it. And then around the middle third, they just have a well-oiled machine around the middle third that you just, no one has seemed to kind of get close to overpowering it. So, you know, I suppose, look, hurling nowadays is in my eyes, it's completely different to when we were playing, and to when we were, I suppose, winning, you know, the 4 in a row. It was man v man. It was 15 on 15. It was, I suppose, in one way, it was the way you kind of wanted hurling to be played. But, you know, times change, things change, systems change, and you know, Limerick are no different to ourselves. We raised the bar back in probably 06, 7, 8, 9. Limerick have certainly raised the bar in the last 4 years and set the bar for other teams to try and reach. So, but the only thing about it is it doesn't seem to be stopping. You know, the Limerick train doesn't seem to be stopping, and if anything, it seems to be getting faster and stronger and more powerful. And you know, as you mentioned there about the under-20s last night, you know, that's just the conveyor belt that they need, you know, to feed into the senior squad over the next couple of years. And to me, that all comes from underage, and it comes from setting up the Limerick's development squads back in, I think it was 2009 or 10, Kieran, was it? Or it was around that.
Yeah, the academy, yeah.
The academy, sorry, that's it, yeah. So they set up the academy, and now they're bearing the fruits of that. And, you know, I know Cork have done the same. So it'll be very interesting to see. But, you know, as I said, it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, Liam Linehan's after sending in a comment on Patreon. He says, Kieran was the centre back, Richie a full forward. Maybe you played other positions too, Richie. You definitely did. Would love to know if they think being a back or a forward is easier or harder with the advent of the short passing / tactical game. Maybe it's not black and white and there are pros and cons. Would be interested to see what they think with all the tactical talk these days around Kylie and Kinnerk and Cahill and Bevins. And to be fair, actually, Kieran, you also played plenty of positions too. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I suppose, as Richie said, you know, the hurling has changed hugely, you know, and I suppose, yeah, where there was a certain amount of coaching that was being implemented, right? But I suppose we had to depend an awful lot on our own brain, and I suppose that your natural instinct. And my natural instinct at the time as a number 6, you know, I'm shadowing 5 and I'm shadowing 7. So I'm kind of covering 5 and I'm covering 7, covering left and covering right. And I suppose half of a sweeper, if you want to call it that. But it was being done naturally. And I suppose in the modern game, Shane, really, when I'm looking at the modern game, I'm kind of saying to myself, what a dream it would be to be playing in that system. Because as Richie pointed out a while ago, you know, there's very few hurleys broken. There's very few fingers being broken. There's very few stitches you're getting. So effectively, you know, it's all about grass. It's all about space. It's all about touch zone. It's all about unforced errors. And, you know, and being confident in yourself. Like, there's fellas getting points there. In every week, we can see it. You know, the ball being popped over. There isn't a man 10 yards left, right, nor near him. He can have a little sip of a cup of tea and put it over the bar. I suppose that was rare in our time because everything was frantic. It was man-to-man. Your job at 6 was make sure 11 isn't kind of getting 1-2, or he'd get 3 or 4 points. So you were babysitting him, but obviously you were acutely aware, you know, as a group of 6 defenders, you were prepared to die for each other, and I suppose prevent every score that was coming from play, and that was your mindset, like.
Yeah, Richie.
Yeah, look, I think, Shane, it is completely different, and I suppose it's very easy, I suppose, for Limerick nowadays as a forward, I suppose, to play in that system because they stick to that system. You know, whether it's failing or whether it's been successful, they don't go away from their system. And I think that's what other teams are maybe failing in with respect to their own game plans. That if it seems to be failing, they somewhat go away from it. But if it is fail, you know, I just feel that Limerick have a system that just can't seem to be, I suppose, broken down. Like, teams have tried to do it in the last couple of years. Teams have tried to go long against them. They've tried to go short. They've tried the physical side of things. They've tried the short game. You know, we've seen that with Cork last year in the final and this year as well. So it's very, very hard. But I suppose from a Limerick point of view, they have their 3 ball winners on the half forward line. You know, like we would have prided ourselves on winning our own puck outs and winning high balls as well. The likes of Owen Larkin, Martin Comerford, myself, Henry. Like, they have their own personal ball winners, and then they have the assassins inside, you could call them, with regards to Galan, Graham Mulcahy, you know, Kyle Hayes when he's there. So it's the middle third for me is hugely important for Limerick. And once they win the middle third, I think it's nearly impossible to beat them because, as I said, they have the lads inside that are going to punish you every day. And, you know, looking at Aaron Galan the other night, I think we only saw a glimpse of how good Aaron is, and we've seen glimpses over the last couple of years of how good he is. But I think this guy, if he, you know, he really puts his mind to it, you know, I believe there was 1 or 2, I suppose, disciplinary issues over the couple of years with Aaron. But I think if this guy's head is right, he is the best inside forward in the game at the moment, and he'll probably go down as one of the greatest that played it as well.
Yeah, so join us for the rest of the show at patreon.com/OurGame.